and I and Pat organized our event today. We're pretty excited to have everybody here. This is the first event of 2015 for Utah APA, right, Susie? Yes. So we're very excited. I'm very excited to be able to present a colleague and friend of mine, Pat Holmes. She's the Vice President of Partner Development for Visit Salt Lake, and Pat directs and manages strategic partnerships with Salt Lake's business and cultural communities, as well as with Utah's hospitality industry. And Pat, just to get us started, I'm just going to have you come right up, and if you want to say anything more about yourself. Pat's been a resident, and I would say a happy resident of Utah for over 27 years. So if you please welcome me and joining Pat with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. I'll try to talk loud so you can hear me, and I'll try to kind of get out of everybody's way. But Matt, you have to tell me if I'm still in the view, because I guess we're taping, or what are we doing?
We are taping.
Taping, okay. So I can edit it, right, in case I... So it's great to be here. I've been, as Robin said, I've been at the Visit Salt Lake, which originally was called Salt Lake Convention and Visitors Bureau, so some of you might be familiar with that name, for 28 years, and certainly didn't ever think I'd be anywhere that long, but I've fell in love with Salt Lake and tourism, and really believe in the city and believe in selling this as a destination. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about tourism just to give you an idea of the impact and the economic driver that tourism is. And then I'm going to talk from the state level on down to the county level. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, obviously planning is not even in my personal life actually, is not my forte. So, but as I was looking on American Planning Association website and talking to Robin and everything, it was really interesting for me to think, oh, yeah, boy, do I know some places that haven't been planned. And so I've got a couple kind of examples of where you shouldn't do it. And then just a couple other things that Robin had helped me with in terms of some things to think about. And I'd like to, I forgot to ask you, Robin, what time are we looking at?
What time is it right now?
Quarter to 10.
Susie, where do we usually go?
Usually we do the program for an hour.
Okay.
There's some time for Q&A, and then 10 to 15 minutes to sort of mingle or ask questions afterwards.
Okay, great. Because I'd like to, at the end, I kind of have it set to throw some of these questions out to you, and to and also it's just some things that you've come across, or some good planning that you've seen in tourism, some bad planning, whatever. So that's the way we're gonna run. So starting with the big picture, tourism, it's really an economic driver. It's not just for, it's for the state, county, city, and even the neighborhood. We have on our website, we're changing our website to talk about neighborhoods. We've got all the information for destination and visitors that what they want to see, but we're actually going to change some things so you can go to a neighborhood, say 9th and 9th, and you can see what all is in there, because one of the things that's really, really popular and is the whole local thing. With our meeting planners, with tourists and everything, they come and they say, I don't want to eat, I want to eat at a great restaurant, but a local restaurant. It's also great to have Olive Garden and Buca de Beppo for those that are comfortable with that or have children or whatever. But when I came here 28 years ago, there were probably maybe 5, 6 restaurants that I would go to with clients, and now it's just really like, oh wow, I have a hard time deciding, because we have such wonderful restaurants and some great food out there. So like the 9th and 9th, 15th and 15th, Sugar House, those types of areas are really, really popular with tourists, and they really want to know where to go. So it does come down to the neighborhood. I'm going to run through a bunch of numbers, and I'm not giving a test afterwards, but I just want to kind of give you a feel, if you're not aware of how tourist visitation and how big that is. And I've got 2013 numbers. I have a couple 2014 numbers, but most of them are 2013 because the 14s aren't in here. But in the 5 national parks that we have, and I just hope you know how lucky we are to have 5 national parks in our state. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal for a state, especially our size. There were 6.3 million visits were made to Utah at that time. And it represents a 3.5 increase over 2012. And this year, despite the 16-day government shutdown, Canyonlands and Arches, those 2 national parks had higher attendance number than they've ever had. So, and that is partly and due to the fact that Governor Herbert got busy and opened the parks. That, by the way, was extremely beneficial to us because, like others, we're always fighting for money. And so when Governor Herbert got all the kudos for doing that and a lot of press for that, that was pretty popular. So now he's right behind tourism. So not that he wasn't before, he's behind it more, I should say. Zion's just, some of these photos are just wonderful, and I just want, Zion's is annually ranked in one of the top 10 national parks for tourism, for visitations. We also have some, great national monuments, recreation areas, 1 national historic site, and again, 5.2 million visits that we had in 2013. And of course, our wonderful ski opportunities here with all the resorts. One of the things that's kind of interesting is we've gotten more chefs, great chefs in our community through skiing than anything else. We have, I talk to chefs often that have come out here to ski and loved it, and then tried to figure out how they could move out here. So we have a lot of the great chefs that have come out. We have Robert Baker, who's at Log Haven. He started out kind of not a ski bum, he was a chef in another area. And then Bombara, Nathan Powers. So number of chefs that have come out to do the skiing. This is our 3rd best for the 4 million skier day visits. This is the 3rd best on record. So again, we'll see what happens this 2014-15 season. Although locally we get kind of snobbish. I've heard visitors say, "Oh, it was great skiing," but as locals we don't necessarily think so. So some of you must have been up there already. One of the things that I am amazed at is that a lot of our state parks are national park caliber. I mean, if you think of Dead Horse Point State Park, Goblin Valley, I mean, any of them, and they would be national park caliber in other states. And so we have a lot of visitation, and that number went up quite a bit because during the time that the shutdown, we were directing people, and we were very proactive. And I say we, meaning the state, was very proactive in getting the notice out about state parks on the website, the visitutah.com website. When tourists would come to that, or visitors would come to that, it would direct you right to, our national parks are not open, however, we've got these wonderful state parks and direct you right to it. So being very proactive in that regard. And one of my favorites, Bryce Canyon. But we also have some beautiful urban sites. I mean, when you've got a clear day, it's a hell of a sight there, when you see the mountains, and people always think we kind of Photoshop that in, but we don't, as you know. And a lot of people, Denver is one of our main competitors, as you can imagine, and a lot of people get off the plane, or our meeting planners that we, or clients that we, and they say, "Oh, this is what I thought Denver was supposed to be." Because, we're close. One of the things that I thought was pretty, I had heard Natalie Gocknauer, she's a chief economist and senior advisor for Salt Lake Chamber. She made the comment about we don't want to stir the pot. And what she was meaning by that is that, if a Walmart closes in Bountiful and another one opens in Sandy, all you're doing is just transferring that money. You're just stirring the pot. We really want to bring in new pots. We want to bring in, and that's what tourism does, bringing in. Tourism, when people come to Salt Lake, it's they just don't stir the pot, but they come in, they spend their money, and then they leave. Most of them do. Some of them actually come back and live here because they love it so much. One of the things with tourism is that when I say we call it a clean industry, in that you don't have to build a plant, another plant or manufacturing plant. You don't have to build, houses for people that are going to be working in the manufacturing plant, or a fire station to service that neighborhood or whatever. Other than hotels and restaurants, you do have to obviously have the infrastructure. It's a pretty clean industry in that people come here and they spend their money, leave it here, and then they go home and hopefully tell some good stories. On the level from the state, in 2013, traveler spending, the estimate was $7.5 billion, and for the first time, which is important in terms of taxes, it generated. First time we went over $1 billion. We generated over $1 billion in state and local tax revenues. And again, very important to you, not only individually as a taxpayer, but very important to the whole, because this goes into the general fund, the $1.2 billion in state and local tax revenues. Well, in state it goes in the general fund, and the different counties, it depends on how they've set it up. The travel and tourism related businesses, and this again was 2013, 132,000 jobs are attributed to the travel and tourism related businesses. And of those 132,000, 87,614 were direct tourism jobs. And when we say direct, what we mean by direct is the number of, it's people that are working directly in that, like they're working in the hotel, they're housekeeping, they're front desk, they're bellman, they're in the restaurants, they're in food and beverage. And so that's a very direct tourism job. And then of that 132,000, 44,000 are called indirect and induced. And what that means is indirect is like where you are working at a printing company, and a meeting planner or convention or meeting need to come and use you to do their printing for their convention. So that would be indirect. Induced are when those that work in those industries use their salary and wages and they spend money in the community, like a car wash or going to a bank to get a mortgage for a loan for a house or an accommodation. Squatters, I think, is a really perfect example of all three, really, because you've got your permanent jobs there that are direct in terms of tourism related, and then they provide a good and service that's essential to a tourist activity, the indirect, and then the induced is when your employees spend the wages and salaries in the community for the different things that they need. So let's go on to Salt Lake a little bit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my organization because I found when I was talking to friends in college years ago, I started working in the hotel business, and they were saying, why does a hotel need a salesperson? Don't people just come? And it's like, well, yeah, but there's 10 other hotels they could look at. So it's like that with the city. We are promoting Salt Lake, and just to let you know how our organization works, we're a private entity. We have a board of trustees we report to and everything, but we have a contract with Salt Lake County to basically to fill all the hotels in Salt Lake County and the convention center. So we have an official mission statement, like everybody does. But as I mentioned, basically we're here to improve the area economy, but we're here to bring in people. If you see conventions at the convention center, pretty much all of those are the ones that we have brought in, except for Comic-Con. Comic-Con is more of a, even though it's huge, it's more of a local because they don't use a lot of hotels. Surprisingly, they don't use the restaurants. The restaurants were all so excited about this, but they stay in the convention center and do what they do. I don't know if you go to Comic-Con, but it's pretty interesting when I walk through here when I park and go to my office. So, like I said, you would have seen us, or we would have been part of that convention. This is just different ways we bring in conventions. For the convention center and the hotels, we have a ski product that's called, heard somebody talking about Ski City. Who was talking about Ski City? That's okay. That's a new brand of ours. We used to have a Ski Salt Lake, and then we realized that was so specific that Sandy or Murray or even Alta couldn't really use that. So we changed the brand to Ski City, and we have a whole total different website, and it's a whole different brand. And so now other cities can use that brand. We also have genealogy tours. As you can imagine, that's a pretty big thing. Motor coach tours were a gateway city to the national parks, Yellowstone, North, Grand Canyon, and all of our parks to the south. Fully independent travelers. That's interesting. FITs, that's been the initial of that type of a person. That's just a tourist, somebody that comes and visits your city. But it's had 3 or 4 different definitions, and lately it's fully independent travelers. And then with our website and social media, that's how we also reach individual travelers to promote Salt Lake and conversely also promote the rest of the state. Our competition is, we compete against Chicago and Orlando and Las Vegas at times, but this is pretty much our competition, which probably wouldn't surprise you, except maybe Austin and San Antonio, because the rest are around in this area in Houston. Just to let you know that when I say we book these meetings, we actually are on the phone or at shows or whatever, or going on sales calls in DC, talking to people, getting them interested in Salt Lake, and then if they allow us to bid on it, we're oftentimes bidding against these other cities, and we put the package together. The hotels do their own proposals, and the convention center, we put the whole package together. We bring people out, we wine and dine them, show them that they can get a drink in Utah, and that it's kind of a fun place. And so these are the cities that we compete against. So in 2014, we had about 275,000 convention delegates, and again, that doesn't include Comic-Con, because that wasn't one of the type of convention that we book that uses hotel rooms and stays for 2 or 3 nights. So a really good year. This has gone up every year, so it's a really good year. Just to give you an idea, we booked business out. The furthest out we booked is 2024. So I hope to be retired by then. But and that was for the American Pharmaceutical Scientists Association, and that's about 8,000. And a lot of groups that are large, there's only a limited number of areas that they can go to, or destinations they can go to that can handle it in terms of the convention center, and so they book quite a ways out. We've got meetings booked every year through 2024, but we only have one right now booked in 2024. One of our biggest ones that you may be aware of. Oh, sorry. Let me go back to this one. We work with the University of Utah Bureau of Business Research, and obviously we need to kind of prove our worth and why tourism is really important. And so for the last 15 years, we've had Bieber come in, and they surveyed our guests, our attendees to conventions, and they come up with every year an estimate of what a delegate spends. And so this is how we get to our delegate spending of about $259 million, is through $942 per delegate. And it's actually more than that, because we're not counting the exhibitors, especially with Outdoor Retailer, that all the entertaining they do and a lot of money they spend on clients. So it's a little bit bigger than that, but that we feel we can justify in terms of that number. And again, breaking it down, again, very important, and this is for Salt Lake County. I should have mentioned I'm now down to Salt Lake County, because that's what we serve. And so these are the numbers in terms of taxes. It gives you an idea. This just shows you. I think it's pretty interesting that of all the 4 million ski visitor days, and I just have to explain. The 4 million ski visitor days mean you may have one skier that stays for 4 days, and that's considered 4. So it's not 4 million skiers; it's the visitor days that are here. And the number we have, the 275,000, are delegates, not the days they spend. But think it's pretty interesting that half of the out-of-state skiers stay in Salt Lake County, as opposed to in Summit County or in South Valley or in some other areas. And of course, pretty high in downtown Salt Lake also. I have a chair up here if you need one. And the competition, as you can imagine, really is again with skiers is the western, like Tahoe and the California ski resorts in Colorado, and even Park City for us in Montana. Our visitor center we have, which is in the convention center, it's actually right across from the Marriott hotel. It's in the convention center, but right across from there. Again, we've had such a huge growth, 80% over the past 5 years growth in coming to the visitor center and visitors coming in. Just a lot more, especially after the Olympics, a lot more visitors that want to come and see who we are and what's going on and what's the deal here. So I think this is an interesting statistic too. The way we're funded is we call it public and private sector. Our public sector is through what we call transient room tax. So when you travel, and it's not just us, so when you travel all over, you get your hotel bill, and it has all these taxes that are listed, city, state, whatever, and sometimes it's called hotel bed tax on your bill, sometimes it's called transient room tax. That's the transient room tax is the ones that we get, the tax that we get from hotels. And so I think it's pretty interesting that in all the whole state, Salt Lake County is the biggest contributor by a huge, huge margin. I know that when we work with the legislature, it's kind of a love-hate relationship because some feel that Salt Lake County gets everything and they're not getting what their share, but there's some realities here in terms of what area is the driver, and I'm sure that's not anything new I'm telling you guys. So how many have heard of the outdoor retailer winter summer market? That's a really huge one for us. We have a summer and a winter one, and this is where the outdoor retailer, the companies come in and they show their wares, and the business owners come in and they buy for, like this couple weeks ago we had the winter market in, so they're putting in their orders for all their winter for 2016. And then we have one in August, and it's the one in August is also large. It's got, let's see, I think we had 26,000 last year. This kind of gives you an idea. I'll give you an idea of when we're bidding on conventions. We start talking outdoor retailer, and they were in Reno, and they were very happy. Everything was going great. And the person that was talking to him, she's talked to him, went to their shows for 7 years, visited with them, said hi, whenever you're ready, we're ready. Well, we were in the right place at the right time when Reno decided that these attendees don't spend money in the casinos, and so the hotels were really not very pleased with them. So Reno hotels just kind of kicked them out, and here we were. And so they came to Salt Lake, and about 3 years later, Reno came back and said, we'll give you everything. You don't have to pay for anything. We want you back. But they had burned the bridges on that. So it gives you an idea. You work a long time for some of these conventions to get these conventions in. This is just, again, to tell you that we do every 3 years we do a survey with outdoor retailers. And so the last one we did was 2012. We'll be doing a summer one. But this, the reason I put this up here is not so much to look at all this jazz here, but just to look at these categories, because this is when I was looking at it and realizing, boy, this is really impactful in so many areas in the community, and it really, this tourism master plan or planning is really in so many of these areas to be able to plan so that you can expand correctly and that you can maintain your community and your neighborhood, because these are the different categories that, and just a little more in depth here. a little more detail in terms of the categories that Beaver considers when they're interviewing, doing their surveys. This.
Interrupt you for a moment.
Yep.
Would you be willing to share this with the group of
Uh-huh.
if we put on our website, for instance, as a information link for those who are here and the rest follow up?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, Matt had asked me if we could do that. I'd be glad to. Again, this is more visual. It just shows you that hotel and restaurant are, of course, really big, as you would imagine, for conventioneers and certainly for the outdoor winter market. City Creek Center also is kind of an interesting entity because they're a organization, Todman, that owns them and owns different malls across the country. They really understand the impact of tourism for their malls. And you can see 25 to 35% of the sales are from visitors more than 50 miles away. And during the summer, there's some two retailers that report as much as 50 to 60% is from visitors. If you've been to the Cheesecake Factory or Brio or any of those where the restaurants are, you'll notice there is a drive-through that you can valet, you can whatever. That was specifically built so that they could get motor coach wide enough and tall and no ceiling or roof, so that they could get motor coach tours to come through. And they work hand in hand with Temple Square and bring in motor coach tours, and they come in, they drop them off, and the City Creek people are there ready to welcome them and take them around, give them a coupon, a book, and the whole thing. Then they have a place where they can park the motor coach tours. So they make it extremely easy. If you've ever had much dealings with the huge buses, the 56-passenger buses, trying to find a place to park after you've dropped off your load is extremely difficult. So they make it very, very easy. And I mentioned, International's been strong, especially Asian. Temple Square was telling me they have a very robust group tour program. They were telling me that they had this past summer, they had 2,000 motor coach buses that came through just with Chinese. And that's 56 passengers. Now, it may not be totally full, but if you think 40 to 56 passenger bus, 2,000 of them, I mean, I was pretty blown away about that. I couldn't believe that. So with City Creek, they look at it as a marketing priority. They have a tourism specialist, somebody that actually works that market, goes to the National Tour Association, goes to the American Bus Association meetings. And they also have a Chinese expert that can help them in terms of how to market and sell to the Chinese market. This one I put in because even though it reflects business, what comes to mind when thinking of Utah as a place to do business, you could pretty much say the same thing about tourists. What comes to mind when somebody thinks of coming to Salt Lake or to Utah? I was glad to see that this number was relatively high, green efficient. Although we know we can always do better, but that's one of the reputation that we have within the meeting industry. And we pretty much, in terms of tourism, whenever we work with meeting planners and convention attendees, they're pretty much right in there. That's what they think of. So, one thing I wanted to mention, years and years ago, the U.S. Conference of Mayors met here. And I don't know if some of you are too young probably to remember Mayor Ed Koch, who was in New York. He was here, he's quite a character, and he was here, and he kept asking his drivers how many street sweepers we had. Because we must have hundreds of street sweepers, because this city is what did he say? He said this is the cleanest city this side of heaven. So we kind of tried to explain to him, well, there's a little difference. We really don't throw down our trash as much as maybe New Yorkers do, so we don't have a huge, just have always gotten, we always get from people when we talk to them in terms of meetings and conventions, they all say their impression is it's felt very safe. It's a very friendly city, and it's a very clean city, and so that's great for a lot of different meetings, especially one that's maybe really high in female attendance or young people. So that's a real good thing to be able to promote. So tourism, as you can see, is a growth industry. I mean, it's been growing every year. Even during the recession, we had some. I don't think we went down in numbers. We just kind of went even and even went up in a couple numbers. So it's a really growth industry. However, as you professionals in the planning area know, there's always brings challenges to that. The challenges that you deal with in a lot of different areas, but especially in planning, because you have, I looked at, planning and design, or I had to say, or a lack thereof, because I've been in the industry in Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma and here, and also traveled all over for a number of years to different conventions. And there's some great cities that do it well, and there's others that just really don't do it well. So have any of you been to Branson, Missouri? I figured there would be one or two. And you go, why would you go to Branson, Missouri? Well, let me tell you. Branson's a little town in the Ozarks, and it could be picturesque, let's put it that way. And they had this little niche that they came up with music. And there's a lot of jug bands, and there's a lot of band playing hammer dulcimer and folk music and everything all in that area. So they capitalized on it. And now, and this is a busy slide, but I want to give you an understanding of how much is going on there. They actually have 49 theaters there, and they're all music theaters. And I just kind of put a list here of some of the regular visitors. Some of them are dead, so they don't come anymore. But from all the years, you had the Johnny Cash, you had the Phyllis Diller, Gladys Knight, Ray Stevens, Rich Little, Barbara Mandrell. You had and all these theaters. Some of them are actually like the Oak Ridge Boys Theater or the Elvis Presley Theater or the Glenn Campbell Theater, and these theaters have music all year round. And then these entertainers that the theater is named after, they come for a couple weeks. Well, actually 3 times a year, I think they have to come and and be there. So built up around this are some additional attractions. There's just listed a couple of them. Silver Dollar City is actually a pretty cool attraction. It's an 1800s theme park, but they didn't knock down all the trees. They didn't make it, just asphalt. It's hilly and it's in among trees, and it's actually pretty cool. But anyway, there's a lot of different things. Dolly Parton's gotten in on this with the Dixie Stampede. They have 200 hotels, 400 restaurants, 3 outlet malls, 13 golf courses. They have 8 million visitors per year, and 65% of the tourists come from outside the 30-mile radius. So, very tourist-oriented. So, the reason I'm telling you that is this is in my opinion, an example of, I was going to say poor planning, but not really planning at all. Whoop, I'm going the wrong way. So here are some facts. Branson is only 19 square miles. It's only got a population of 10,000. It does have an airport, but Frontier just pulled out. So I'm not sure who else are going to get in there. They have an airport that just goes puddle jumpers. And the theater, all these theaters, these 49 theaters, are along a 2-mile stretch. And it's also Main Street. So when you come into Branson, it's Main Street, where all the regular Main Street things, your restaurants, your shops, everything, and hotels and theaters. So this is what it looks like when you come in. Can you guys see all? So if you're trying to, I will have to say, they built a spur finally that goes around Main Street to get to like Silver Dollar City. But if you're going to a theater, this is what's going on. Oh, you got King Kong there, though. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Right there. I don't know if you saw some of the attractions. Hollywood Wax Museum, which is, I guess, required in a tourism destination. and now Titanic Museum. I think that's another one that's kind of starting to be required. Now this was interesting. This hotel here, this little motel here, I found this when they were advertising that they were selling the motel. So I guess they thought it was pretty cool that there was 29,000 daily vehicles that went through, and they even showed that the traffic was backed up. So I'm not sure if I don't know whether that would be my selling point with that. So this is, again, in the Ozarks. If you've ever been in the Ozarks, they call it the Ozark Mountains, which are, after we live here, it's kind of a joke. But it's a beautiful area. They've got Lake of the Ozarks, a beautiful, huge lake, kind of like a Midwestern Lake Powell, where everybody goes to. You can't see some of the trees. So it's a really beautiful area, but they didn't think at all about, nothing. They didn't think all about this, about what they were going to do. And it just kind of bubbled up. And the Silver Dollar City I was mentioning, it was actually built in a smaller version in the early 1900s, and is built up. And they've done a good job of planning, so they're not tearing down trees, and they're making it still a really cool area. But this is pretty bad. I grew up in Kansas City, and so we used to go to Silver Dollar City, and my husband and I used to go down to Branson a couple times, and we would just walk. If we went to a theater, we would just walk. It was, we got there before the car that was 2 miles away got there. So, and interesting too, I was thinking, if you saw the list, I think this is a little bit of a boomer entertainment spot. I'm not really sure. I'd be interested in their demographics to see if they're getting the millennials or the whatever. So I don't know how sustainable this is in terms of, unless they get a YouTube theater or something, I don't know. And we have a little bit of that in terms of Moab. With Highway 191, that goes right through there, the thoroughfare, I find it really not terribly pleasant when you're sitting out because you've got this main thoroughfare, and it's competing directly with outdoor dining, sitting there shopping, just kind of like to meander along, look at the little shops and the whole thing, and the events that they have, the festivals, everything. Because you'll be sitting there in an outdoor dining area, and there's constant traffic. The semi-trucks are using their engine brakes to, downshift and, as they're trying to stop at each stoplight. Noise, air quality. Just a couple, recently was at this restaurant sitting out there, and it was really not very pleasant at all. And this Best Western here has built a really neat area here, which is outside. This is all outside dining, and my husband and I were there having breakfast, and it was so obnoxious. We just went inside. So, and I was talking to the tourism director there, Marion DeLay, who's been there forever and does a wonderful, wonderful job. And she said, they've tried to talk about moving. They should have thought about it, but there was some discussion at the time. But they decided they wanted all that traffic coming through and all that busyness. And there's been talk about trying to redirect that, but there's so much growth outside Moab. It's really difficult to find the land to have that highway go around. So, just a little bit of something we have here, and you all probably maybe know some others in the state. I just had experienced this lately, and so it really came up to me. Youth Tops of Tourism not all is not lost. There's some things going on in the state. Youth Tops of Tourism, they came up with this term, I can't say it, rurism, and this was in response to a lot of the rural counties saying, you guys don't really do much for us, and we're dying here, or we have this, and we don't know how to develop it, or whatever. So they've identified some different counties, and Emory County is one of them. Now, this is something I've not heard of. Has anybody gone bouldering? Do you know what bouldering is? Tell me what bouldering. Tell everybody.
Climbing on rock that is within reach, not having to be roped in.
Right, not rappelling. And this is becoming a huge thing, apparently, in Joe's Valley in Emery County. And they're having thousands of people come in, and now it's like, oh my gosh, what do we do with them? How do we do it, or whatever? One of the things that I was, again, thinking of when I was putting this together was, in so many instances, tourism just happens. You don't necessarily plan for it, you know, because like in Branson, there's a cave there called Marble Cave, and they started promoting Marble Cave, and then kind of snowballed from there. And you just think of here, you know, the Homestead Resort. You know, that started with a family that tried to farm out there with the springs and the rocks and the whole thing. And because they were in Midway, which is midway between two communities, they'd have people knock on the door at night and say, hey, can I stay here tonight? So they got smart real quick, and they stopped, put up the plow, and they developed that whole area. Same thing with Bryce Canyon, with the Styrett family. You know, Ruby's Inn was if you go back in the historical pictures, you know, you see the house where people were coming to see Bryce Canyon, and they were knocking on the door and saying, hey, can we stay here? So a lot of the tourism just kind of bubbles up, and that's kind of what's happening in Emery County. So they are working with Utah Office of Tourism to not only for the bouldering portion, but also to promote San Rafael Swell and Little Grand Canyon. And then Green River, also in Emery County, is really working with them. And I say working with them because I don't think it's a what you would call a tourism master plan, but it's getting there. And there's two other counties they're working with, Kane County and Daggett County. Kane County where Kanab is, and so that's another area that has kind of potential to grow kind of in a bad way. Salt Lake County, it kind of interesting. I was checking to make sure, because I didn't think that Salt Lake County or Salt Lake City had a tourism master plan, but I was checking to make sure. And my boss, who's the president of our organization, said, well, interesting you should ask, because that's going to be one of our we do a retreat with our executive committee, with our board of trustees in the county, and that's going to be one of our topics that we're going to talk about. So I was actually, after going through all this and seeing, you know, all this, I was really glad to hear that. So that there are some things happening. I'm not sure the state will ever come up with a tourism master plan, because there's so many entities and so many, you know, rural and urban and all that. But I certainly could see our counties and different areas, local areas coming up with that. So again, when Robin and I were talking, we were talking about, you know, in terms of strategic tourism planning, and I'm certainly not an expert, and I'm not necessarily in the pecking order to make a huge difference here. But one of the things I think is important is for tourism to continue to diversify. Because we, you know, with the group tours and conventions and meetings and motor coach tours, ski tour groups and everything, the agricultural tourism is really, if you look around the country, that's really a huge thing now. And I wanted to put together something where we bring people in and literally go to the sheep farm, you know, wherever, and then go to a restaurant that's serving that lamb and do some really connections there. Heritage and cultural tourism, again, that's a really big thing. That's kind of what Branson is doing in one way. Ecotourism, rural tourism we just talked about. But these are some of the things that I would see, and again, Robin was helpful to give me some of these in terms of what you need to be considering. Prioritizing that tourism development with the funding and the resource allocation, or capacity building programs for local communities. This one was air quality safety. This is a tough one. I know you see that in the newspaper all day. Can oil and gas development coexist with tourism? I think it can, as long as it's about 500 miles away. But that's a tough one, especially for southern Utah.
No, you need to be a little more careful with that. If you look at Congressman Bishop's land exchange bill, you'll see that it's directly related to moving oil and gas locations and tourism practices where they exist, plus 150,000 acres of new wilderness.
Yeah.
So I think a little differently. I think that done correctly and done with planning, those can be projects.
Well, it's interesting because, and Moab is a really good example of it with the, you know, this tourism has been building, and it's all of a sudden people are not realizing it until there is this kind of oil and gas, or not necessarily oil and gas, but just mineral development, the whole thing with Moab, and then they're finding that Moab tourism is their #1 industry there, and that didn't used to be the case. So it's like, okay, you got to protect it, but you've also, it's a tough one because especially in the southern Utah and the rural areas too, to try to keep that pristine city or town or location or area, and also to be able to handle that development. This was one I hadn't thought about. Robin mentioned this, sharing economic benefits to all layers of society. And I think that's a real important one that I hadn't really thought about as being part of a tourism master plan. So, I mean, the bottom line is we want to make sure there's a quality tourist experience because the planning is extremely important, because our destination needs to be kept clean. Air quality needs to be improved. We need to make sure that we're still a destination that people want to come to. So that's extremely important, but also, again, looking at what's best for the community. And I truly believe we can do both. It just needs to be done in a little bit a smart way and a strategic way, and looking at it for the future, into the future. So that's what I have. I'd like to hear, I mean, it was interesting hearing what you were saying. I'd like to hear from you all what your experience has been with other, tourist areas. Did those that went to Branson, did I kind of describe that pretty well about what you experienced there? Are there some best practices you've seen or some other things?
The phenomenon of vacation rentals, and I'm just wondering what, is that, are you getting calls from people even locally to find locations, or what is your opinion? What's the situation relative to that and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, we get calls on that. You know, the Airbnb and the
RVO.
Yeah, RVO. Personally, it's people coming in and spending money, in the community. It's not the hotel. You don't get the hotel, the revenue there. But I think it's a great thing. My sister lives in San Francisco, and she belongs to a club, I guess, that they trade homes. And being in San Francisco, she's in a pretty nice area and overlooks the Golden Gate Bridge. So a lot of people want to trade for that. So she's been to some phenomenal places just to trading homes. It's tough because it's kind of like this is how we've done it. So it's always hard to move to there are new things coming in. It's just like my mind's gone blank. What's the taxi, the personal taxi? Uber. Uber. There's a lot of resistance to that in terms of needing to feeling like you need to license that and I understand that. I totally understand that. It's a tough one because I understand wanting to make sure that you've got some safeguards, but it's coming. I mean, cities are doing it. Everybody's doing it. So it's not something that's going to go away. So I personally think it's a good thing. It just increases our tourism.
Have you felt pushback from the residential community or from the hotels?
No, not really. Certainly not. I haven't heard anything from the residential community. I mean, I live by the mouth of Cottonwood Canyon, well, in between Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon. And so there's a street where during the winter time there's a lot of cars parked on either side, and those. So that I'm not, I'd rather not have all those cars up and down. But it's the economy. It's a great economic driver, and it does great things when we can use those taxes for things.
about air quality. We've heard the stories about businesses that choose not to relocate to Utah because they encountered an aversion when they visit. What kind of things does that do to tourism? Are you seeing when there's a long inversion, will that change plans for people, or how does it impact?
Well, I will have to say, when we were on the national news with the worst air in the country, there were some people that called us. There were some people that had some, questions. And unfortunately, last year when it was so bad, Outdoor Retailer was in town. And so you can imagine, a lot of them stayed in Park City, and you can imagine being in Park City and going, oh, do I really have to go into that? So it does impact. It really does impact. I mean, I don't like it personally living here, but it's difficult. We used to do what we call familiarization trips, FAM trips, and we would bring in 10 or 15 meeting planners at a time, and we, take them to the hotels and the convention center and wine and dine them and everything to show them what we could do. If they brought their convention here, and we used to have one in January, and we stopped having it in January because we just couldn't depend on that. We're right up there with everyone else with Healthy Utah and everything, saying we got to do something here. Legislature has to address this. So it does impact. I hadn't really seen it impact. At least I'm sure there was some anecdotal. That there were some issues, but I hadn't seen an impact as much until last year when we were literally getting calls and saying, I just saw this, should I even come there? Am I going to get sick? Am I going to be okay? My kids, and it's hard to answer that question when people are calling and saying, sure, come anyway, I live here. Any other feedback or even comments on some of this we talked about? Yeah.
I wonder if it's ever been quantified, or if just the weird liquor laws, has that been an impact that is palpable?
Oh yeah. It's better. I mean, again, I moved here 28 years ago. We had clubs and all, and it's better. And I try to explain to people aren't wanting to come here to, I can't go to Utah to get drunk. I want to sit down and have a glass of wine with my meal, or I want to visit, go to a bar and have a glass of wine with somebody and visit. So it's gotten a lot better. There's three things that we are, as a tourism organization, that we are pushing, I should say. One is to get rid of the Zion curtain, because that's a real, we don't think it's necessary, and it's also a very negative. You'd be amazed at how negative it is out there, because people just think that it's so silly. They just, oh yeah, you can get a drink there, but what is there? Is there a curtain there? Is it, is there a gate? Is there whatever? And the other thing that it's kind of like the tax code. That you start with this, and then you build this, and this, and this, and by the time you get, it's crazy. And that's kind of how the liquor licensing has gone. So you have a hotel that may have 14 different Grand American has 14 different licenses in their hotel because of the way the licensing is set up. So if you're sitting in their lobby bar with a glass of wine, and you see a friend or your boss or whatever checking in, which is from here to here, maybe a little bit further, you might get up, take a glass of wine, and walk over and just say hi to your boss, and you will be stopped and told you can't take that glass of wine past this line. You have to either leave your $14 glass of wine you just paid for, or chug it, or whatever. So it's kind of opposite what we're trying to do here. And the other thing is, in the hotel banquet rooms, the same thing. You cannot, so the banquet rooms are licensed, the bars are licensed, the room service is licensed, and up until recently, you couldn't order a glass of wine, you had to order a whole bottle, which again kind of is, I think, opposite of what we're trying to do. But there's no licensing for hallways. There's no way to license a hallway. So officially, you cannot have alcohol in the hallway. So we're pushing to have one hotel license that will license the whole building, and you can certainly have some different policies or whatever for the different locations, but that's just to have one license. First of all, it'd be extremely much more easier for the hotels to maintain and try to figure out, are we doing it right here, are we doing it wrong, or whatever. So those are the two things. Then those are the two main things, actually. There's a couple other we've been talking about. Those are the two main and we were told there would not be any liquor legislation coming up at this session, but it takes a while to kind of build that and push that. So, yeah.
So what do you think that the chance is of that one license for the hotel being able to go into all of this? Because, I've been to a lot of events where you can get something alcoholic in the banquet room, but maybe it's a charity event or a silent auction outside in the hall, so you can't take your glass and walk around the hall to look at the things you might want to bid on. It kind of works against it because you're not loosening up the purse strings.
Yeah. No, we totally agree on that. Again, I was told that that's probably not going to happen this session. And when we got rid of the club, that was probably a 10-year process. I don't think this will be a 10-year process, but I think there's more and more people that are kind of understanding and saying, yeah, we can do this. But it's a very contentious, as you know, if you live here, a very contentious issue. So
just one last closing comment while you're on hotels, not liquor-wise, but hotels. What's the status of the downtown convention hotel?
An RFP was put out, and Omni Hotel was chosen to when they submitted their bid. And the RFP was written pretty narrow so that the right kind of companies would bid. And personally, I think that's absolutely wonderful because they would be building the hotel and managing it. And in my experience, there's a number of hotels out there that have been built by investment groups, and they're not really functional terribly. So it's great that there's a hotel corporation, and very rare because Marriott, Sheraton, Hyatt's, none of them own their hotels. They just manage the hotels. So anyway, so Omni is working with Salt Lake County now, and there's some legislation from the state that there are certain things that have to be. You have to have at least 850 rooms. It can't be more than 500 feet from the convention center. So there's some specifics that they have to go by, but there are some other things that they're negotiating. And I actually talked to Mayor McAdams and asked him what he thought, how long he thought that would be, and he said probably another 6 weeks, and they'll have an announcement and a location, because that's part of the negotiating too in terms of location.
So you don't want to tell us the location?
I don't know. I can tell you right across from the convention center where that old building that needs to be torn down it's down from, it's on West Temple. I'm trying to think. It's between First and Second South on the east side. That's one location. Where the post office and Royal Wood Plaza is, there's two locations they're actually looking at there. They're actually also, I don't know how it's going to fit. They actually are also looking at where UMOCA is, the Museum of Contemporary Art. They would take that down, and then there's some offices there they would take down, so it actually would be right there connected to the convention center. So we literally don't know, and the county, they're still kind of working things out too. So we're excited about that, though. I never thought I'd see that because this is about the fourth time we tried to get that convention hotel, and we turn away a lot of business because we can't handle. We can handle the convention center space. We can't handle the number of hotels, and like outdoor retail, we use 38 hotels, and that they don't have to use that in any other city. So, anyway.
All right, thanks, Pat. Can everybody join me in giving Pat a We're done for today. Pat's here to answer any specific questions you have, and enjoy the food and drink provided by Visit Salt Lake. Thanks for that, Pat. And thanks, everybody, for coming today.